Hey,
Yeah,
Doug, how you
all
doing?
right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to Own Your Agents, the new name for agents for humans. We're testing different brand names, but we said that on one of the shows, and we were like, "That's pretty cool. Own your agents." So
Yeah.
that's what
So
we're
if you're
calling
in this branch of the A/B test, that's what it's called. But for those of you in the other branch, you'll see a different name.
Yeah, but this, by the way, everybody, this really is us. We got Joseph, Douglas, and David on the call.
That's just what
Fully
an AI would
analog.
say.
Exactly. We're here. We're going to be talking about agents. David just introduced some great news for the day to kick us off. I think that would be fun to start with David, a little bit of intro. You can share what you just told me because that's awesome. And a little bit about your background and kind of even how you think of what even an agent is. We always love to talk about that with our guests. And it's been this word that's been thrown around for a long time. I mean, even back when they did The Matrix, everyone's like, wow, did anyone remember that?
Agent Smith.
Was an agent?
I just realized
worrying
that.
anybody else? So, I thought that would be a good place to start. You take it away, and then me and Joseph can have a little, intro for those that don't know us too.
I
Yeah,
was
for
thinking
sure.
of this morning. Isn't it better to call it like a butler? Like, wouldn't that be more accurate of what we want and what we're getting from this? I don't know. What do you think?
I like it. I mean, I even maybe we even are, because we're graduating to this new era of more equal playing field of less, better terminology. Maybe it's more like a collaborator or like some sidekick. So there's not this slave master dynamic. I don't know.
Egalitarian of you.
Oh, I think slave would be a bad term. That would not be good.
Well, they're even changing that on I hear a development level. There's some people trying to change like fundamental terminology, even on a very root level of systems.
Well, yeah, on hard drives, it's like master slave, but I haven't seen that in a while. That seemed to be like a old one. But then the default branch on Git for version control was master, and then that got changed.
I like that.
Main.
I like that. It's shorter too. Way easier to type.
Well, there's a lot, as we can tell, there's a lot of tangents we can go down here. David, take it away.
You want me to introduce myself? All right. Hey, I'm David Gutman. So I have a consultancy called Superstruct. I set up AI employees for solopreneurs and founders. And I mean, it's a pretty magical time right now. Doug was referencing the good news, which is that if you're, watching this sort of close to when we record it, Fable 5 subscription access was extended to July 12th, which is really good news. So
originally it was going to be midnight tonight, so everyone was like,
oh,
I already crashed my whole Fable. I'll tell the story in a little bit, but
I knew they would reset it.
It was a real debacle.
Teasing.
Yeah, I love the arms race. I like that OpenAI is keep them in check. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Oh, because they were talking about how GPT 5.6 was going to come out today in response to Fable ending. So by extending it 5 days, it's like an Aikido move.
So we're going to talk even about why those that don't understand these topics, why Fable is even something important. I think it'd be cool to talk about what we're doing with it. I think it'd be great to also talk about OpenClaw, which I took, David also, I was one of his early, clients for him helping walk me through the setup of OpenClaw. I'm also, Joseph, I'm one of the early adopters of his hardware boxes. I'm going to be testing OpenClaw on a local box and a Hermes, and I'm going to got 2 experiments going on of personal agents. So this is the kind of topics that we like to talk about. So I'll do a little quick.
So if anyone out there has a product they want tested, Doug is your man.
That's right. I live in Gainesville. It's very quiet. There's very few distractions, Gainesville, Florida. So I have plenty of time to experiment with all these sorts of things. So yeah, send me your technologies and API keys. So my name is Douglas. I come at AI and technology from a real design perspective. That's my background. I love product design. I love figuring out use cases. I love playing with different tools and seeing what's actually pleasurable and what's actually a horrible experience, and then suggesting and recommending with fervent, reverence the things I love, while also dissing the things that drove me crazy. And all along the way, talking with cool friends like Joseph and David about how we can productize services and produce things that make humans' lives easier while we offload the things that should be offloaded to our robot collaborators or butlers as appropriate. And so that's a topic that I love to explore. a lot of my day-to-day is just keeping systems afloat for a venture holding company. But a good portion of that affords me good educational opportunities to keep innovating inside the company and using new tools. And my recent exploits are to try to create an agentic platform for the company. A lot of the people in the company are like concerned about this term agents. They're like, we just need solutions. And I'm like, well, you kind of need agents that bring the solutions, but let's not talk about agents. Let's go solutions first. And then it will come in a nice package of an agent, hopefully, if I design my stuff right. So that's a little bit of my background. I'll hand it over to Joseph, and then we'll jump in.
Hi. Yeah, I was let's see. I've been doing startups for a long time. I was early at Lyft and Facebook, and I've done a few startups. I was also doing a PhD in AI, and I have been doing a lot of research recently with the new company trustedrouter.com, and also by combining different models, open source models and closed source models potentially. We're actually outperforming Fable even and Mythos on a lot of benchmarks. Not every benchmark, but a lot of different ones. And so
while also
it's fun to
being
get back into research
and encrypted, right? Or
yeah, the cool thing about Trusted Router is it's just like something people use, which is called Open Router, but it's just as easy to use, and it's entirely encrypted, because who knows what these companies are doing, looking at your data, selling your data. I think everyone's talking about that more now. Like, do you actually own your data? Do you own your agents? Do you own your data? And if you're giving it away to the labs, then is it really yours anymore?
Yeah. I want to just say something really interesting to you, Joseph, because I love talking with Joseph about Trusted Router. Such a cool company. I solved I'm an automations guy too, and I solved some of my earliest problems by using a router. That was when it was like Claude's offline, or OpenAI's offline, and the entire thing would break. And as soon as I understood what routers could do, it had a fallback and it saved the day. It went from like a weekly or every other few days issue to once in a month or two, I had to fix these things. But I was shocked, because I was listening to my favorite business artificial intelligence podcast called The Artificial Intelligence Show. Super cool guys. And they were talking about Fugu, I think is another routing system, something like that.
Sakana Fugu.
Yeah.
Sakana is a lab in Japan. It's pretty cool.
So I was shocked at this AI expert say this. He was like, and then there's like these routing systems like Fugu, and it's like, then it's even more confusing, because I don't even know what they're doing and they don't tell me what they're doing. And I was like, man, he's smart in the AI realm, and he completely misses the whole opportunity of routers, not least what I just said in terms of stability, but what you're doing in terms of intelligent routing, transparent routing, not least of all, smarter, cheaper, and more private. I mean, that's rare that you get an upgrade across multiple aspects like that. And so I think what you're doing is great. And I think what you're doing also with Trusted Router is going to require good communication. There's so much opportunity there for people to understand that actually it brings more transparency. It has the opportunity to bring more transparency
if you're open source. Yeah, and Sakana is quite closed source. I think that's why maybe he was saying that. Like Fugu is an orchestration model, but they don't tell you what's happening. So who knows what it's doing? And it could be downgrading you and giving you cheaper stuff, even though you're paying full rate. Who knows? The thing about Trusted Router is that we're entirely open source. Unlike Open Router, even though their name has open in it, it's not open source at all. Not Sakana. All these labs are not open source. We open source everything. All of our benchmarks, all of our results are independently verified and totally open source. And you're absolutely right that the benefits are actually that everyone should use a router for whatever stage you're at. Everyone should use a router. Fortune 100 individual developer, you should be using a router, because everyone uses Claude and sees that it goes down a lot. Like you spend a whole morning not using it, and every service goes down. But by using a router, you can actually try out a bunch of different models, realize that at least something else is up, and then you can get your work done. And then you realize, hey, I could save 90% also. Let's keep doing that.
Well, I just got my Trusted Router API key, which I'm installing on my new instance of OpenClaw that David helped me install. So you guys, you're all my heroes. David, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about how you think of an agent. Has it evolved over time? How is OpenClaw an agent? Have we reached the limits of agents? Like, just give us a little bit of that. Maybe in that you can tell us a bit more about your OpenClaw involvement.
Yeah, sure. So Man, I remember, I guess it's probably, what is time? A couple years ago or a year ago. I'm not even sure, but I do remember getting really annoyed working with. This is more on the consulting side, more dev build out for AI, and getting really annoyed with clients who would throw around the word agent when it was at a point where I don't think people really agreed. Even much more prominent experts really in the field, I think also didn't particularly love that word, because it didn't mean the same thing to a lot of different people. And so I'd get really annoyed when people would use it. And it is kind of interesting now, where I'm now at the point where I think it is actually a useful kind of agreed on term. And I think what has changed is the rise of Claude Code and Codex. Not to say that before that there weren't things that had the same capabilities, but I do think when I use the word agent, that's the capabilities that I'm thinking about. So something along the lines of Claude Code, Codex, Devin, probably Cowork at this point. As long as those are online and running, and I guess have more, deciding if I want to avoid the word agency or not, but if they have,
you can't use the word in the definition of the thing.
That's where it comes from, right? Agency, like they take agency as the idea.
Yeah. So apologies for the tautology, but the big thing compared to the model itself, like in the olden days, like back when ChatGPT came out and you were talking to it, it was very clearly text in, text out. And that text now, even though that still is what's going on with the model under the covers, the harnesses have gotten advanced to the point that just using those models in the text in, text out, real manipulations, real state changes, real I guess effects in the outer world are possible and happen a lot more confidently. And then once you get to the level of, like, I think beyond that, you asked about OpenClaw. I think that is also an agent, but has a lot more built into it than what I would consider like the first agents of Claude Code and Codex. Long-winded answer. Hopefully that got you what you wanted. Yeah. Happy to go into any more of that.
Well, I think that what's interesting is that, like, it's a lot of things. And there's like a common underlying set of probably characteristics of an agent. Part of that definitely is that agency. That's like when I was doing automations, they were quite brittle. If something didn't work, it broke. Versus this idea of like a more agentic process where it can start to try new things. Maybe it can work stuff out. It can come from other angles. There's a little bit more kind of potential of it. Like you said, it can confidently maybe do something. Like maybe you can say, hey, I need this thing. Instead of saying like, here is how you get the thing. It's like, it will be like, hey, let me try different ways. It can use different tools. Is like one aspect of it, but also there's maybe these different flavors, and one might be an OpenClaw. That's how someone interacts with it. Some might just be working in terminal and think of that as they're working with their agent. Others might work in Codex. I was so surprised when you, David, said that you do like most of your work out of your OpenClaw. And there's me thinking that you guys are like in your crazy tech. You got terminal windows open on multiple screens, and you've got like, and it's just this crazy mess of code. And I'm like, and IDEs and folder structures. And then Joseph's like, I only work in Codex now, or like Claude Code. It's like, I don't even see. And I'm like, that blows my mind. Like, you guys as developers, like, like you're really entrusting so much to these.
I mean, it is funny if you think about like the most advanced developers, you think like more low level, right? Like the most, intense code samurais flipping individual bits like with tiny magnets. But no, I mean, I think these tools are,
you don't talk in binary.
Yeah, right. I mean, It certainly is really impressive. Someone who can go down into assembly and machine code and they see the matrix and everything like that. I think that's what you are envisioning my terminal looks like, with the green characters constantly
Exactly.
scrolling all over the place. But you know, it's pretty cool how much you can trust to get done. And you mentioned, you know, when you were talking about the agent, where it can try different things. I think the loops are that's a really hot word right now. I think that's a big part of the agents themselves, that inner loop where
Great topic.
So you ask it to do something or for something. And again, in the olden days, that we just go back to the first version of ChatGPT, you ask it a question, it responds. It has a finite amount of, I guess, time or tokens to respond with. And then it's up to you to like ask it again or tell it that it didn't solve your problem or whatever it is. Now these harnesses, again, you know, I'm going to mention Claude Code, which I think was a really big turning point for a lot of people. Codex, you know, internally, there is a loop there that is going to let it end its turn, and then it'll prompt it again. And the way that it works is it can check like this exit condition of whether or not it achieved what it is. Otherwise, it can keep going. And I think those loops are also a big part of what makes an agent an agent.
I think that's a cool little tangent there in terms of loops, because now this was the last week I've started to try to get it. I keep trying to like get ahead, like one little thing at a time. Like, what's the next thing I've heard I want to learn about? And this last week was like the difference between loops and goals. And Joseph's doing some incredible stuff, like with being able to be inspired by existing apps that might cost lots of money or not be able to be like how he wants them to be, and having these goals, setting these goals to replicate those apps. One other way that I blew through Fable earlier this week was not fully understanding how to do goals and loops. And suddenly within, I think 10, 15 minutes, my entire 5-hour allotment of Fable was.
Did you do the ultra code with the fan out and all the sub agents?
Yeah. But in my mindset, so I'd love to talk a little bit about it's interesting also too, that you mentioned loops are already built in. People that don't even understand the concept of like /loop are already using loops. They're just not realizing it. But this differentiation of loops, goals, when to use which, and maybe a use case for like how to distinguish a proper use case for either would be helpful.
For either what, using
loops and goals? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I actually have not been a huge user of goal, the /goal or goals. So Joseph, probably, I'd kick it over to you for a little bit more. I guess
I'm not sure there's a difference really. I mean, a goal sounds like it just ends eventually, but I think it's the same. You pick a goal.
Yeah.
So like loop is more like time bound. I mean, loops can even be treated like a routine, versus goal is like a distinct end result that you're looking to get.
Okay. So I think for any interaction with an agent, going back to Cursor and what it had and Claude Code and so on, the best results are always going to come from when you can give and honestly, this even predates dealing with AI, like running a dev shop and having software engineering management and the best ways to do that, and teaching clients how to work with human engineers. The best situation is when you have an outcome in mind, you can clearly articulate what that outcome is, and you can give basically a test that whoever is implementing that product or whatever it is that you want, they are able to test whether or not it is complete and up to your standards before they give it back to you for you to test and tell them that they did it all wrong. And so that has always been true. That has been true working with human engineers. It has not changed now that we work with AI agents and agentic software engineers. And that has been true even before we get into these longer horizon tasks and we use specialized commands like /goal to do it. But what this means is if you are going to use /goal or its predecessor, like the Ralph Wiggum loop, if anybody's familiar with that, you do have to have some good criteria for when it should stop, because you could come up with a goal that's like continue working on this app and it can just go on forever. Now, most loops have some kind of max number of iterations where, you know, it stops and then it restarts, then it's got a counter, and then it'll stop after it hits that max. But you're pretty much guaranteeing that it's going to hit that max, and it may not have moved the ball much in the direction that you actually wanted to go. So again, this has been true. I think the agents are now more powerful. They're smarter. They can go longer on these things, but without a good end state that it can test for itself, you're probably going to have a rougher time. But it's pretty impressive. So before I hand it over to you, Joseph, I will talk about my most recent use of goal with Fable. That was really good. So right now I'm working on a game, and it's a multiplayer online game. And so to make the iteration of that faster and not rely on humans, there is the bot AI. So not an LLM, not like any intensive like model, but there is, you know, a collection of heuristics that can play through the game as a human, or, you know, with a human or something like that. The way that it has been graded on how well it can do is all the levels have been broken up into like smaller chunks components, and whether or not that AI can beat that component, it gets 1 point. So you can imagine if there's 1,000 of these components and it can get through 500, you know, it's got a 50%. So what I did is I gave Fable the goal of getting that score up to 1,000 or 100%. And it was really interesting to watch it. So it actually started at like 350 and it got up to 824. So a huge increase in Fable's AI creating a game-specific AI to play the game, and that worked really well. And at a certain point in time, it recognized that it was on a plateau because it was keeping track of every iteration, everything it tried. So it came up with a hypothesis. Here's how we can get, you know, a huge increase in score. In fact, it did that in parallel. So it had a bunch of sub-agents test various hypotheses, and they would each see what individually they could do to increase the score. And then there was a aggregator process that would try and combine all of those and see which ones played nicely together and which ones had to be removed because it would fight the other ones and lower the score once it was combined with other ones. And that was really interesting to see. It could track how much improvement there was each iteration. And once it saw that it was plateauing, it was able to sort of alert me and exit the loop.
That's super cool. I'd love to, I want to hand it up to Joseph for his feedback and goals use case. And one thing that I think would be interesting to cover, and, you know, Joseph, you might be able to speak to this too, is like intelligent like use of these things to maximize your token efficiency. Like, for example, I was thinking about, like, I did a lot of planning with Fable before I completely made a mistake today and blew out my entire 5 hours in 5 or 10 minutes. I have no idea what happened, but I was like, you know, I should probably not like get Fable to crawl the web and do screenshots. That seems like it's gonna probably use a lot of tokens. I should probably not get it to do just like big building projects that aren't that intelligent. It actually seems like a much better planner. And so my current project is to redo this very involved agentic platform that would be maybe $5,000 to $10,000 a month for my company. But first of all, we don't need all of it, and we don't need, we can't afford that. So we're just not going to do that. So I want to like use Fable to look at all of it and plan a build, not actually do the build, a super robust plan that like maybe then Opus could actually then just build, saving tokens. And so like even getting our heads around, and I think, Joseph, we've talked about how Trusted Router can be super helpful, not least of all to make sure you don't go over your token usage by setting limits, but like intelligently knowing like when to use the smartest things for the things that should be used and not wasting tokens when it's not appropriate. No.
Yeah, I actually bought a second Fable subscription a month ago when it first came out. I mean, it feels like years ago, but it was just a few weeks ago. And I immediately blew through both subscriptions in 3 days, and then they cut us off. And then when I got it back, I immediately blew through another full subscription in 2 hours as well. And I was a
What were you
bit
doing
annoyed
and
about
was it
that
worth it? What
because
were
it
you
was
doing?
50%. They only give you 50%. It wasn't good.
Yeah.
I
I guess
actually
no, but did you get your, was it worth it? Like, did you
It
assign it
was
to someone?
good. It was good, but it was a bit fast. So actually, I find a lot of people are getting all their information about AI on Twitter. So I noticed a tweet that day, Mitchell Hashimoto, who's like a big founder, he said he has Fable run it and then make a plan, and then you ask Fable to have Codex execute it because I have 2 Codex subscriptions also. So I asked Codex to actually write the code, iterate that, and do all that, and then I I have Fable review it, the code. So the Codex
So
will.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think there actually was somebody had some research that was showing that Codex 5.5 can implement just as well as Fable can. It's just so once the plan was created, the implementation, like a Fable created plan implemented by both Fable and 5.5 were equivalent. It was just a better planner.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess has someone done a? I mean, that sounds like it was just vibes based. Like I'd rather some real science around that potentially.
It seemed more scientific. I don't know if under the
Kentucky.
covers it was vibes, but I'll dig it up. You know, I'll see if I can find that.
Well, it reminded me of an idea. We're doing a lot of research now with Trusted Router, and I don't think anyone's tested this. Like, what if you have a smart model and a dumb model, and then you could do 2 ways. You could have an advisor model where you have a dumb model running things, and then it decides when to call the advisor when it feels stuck or wants advice, and it decides itself when to do that. But it's a dumb model, right, by default. And then see how long it takes you to solve a benchmark and have the cost. And then you can do the reverse, where you have a smart model driving a sub agent that's like a dumber model, and seeing what the cost of that is and how
Mhm.
quickly it's done and all of that. Which one
That's
is
what
better?
works,
It's actually no
honestly.
one's ever done that test. Actually, just a pure scientific like what is the cost and what's the speed, and it's not obvious to me what the answer is actually, but there probably is one that does way better, more consistently, and I don't think anyone's told us that.
I mean, this is such a opportunity spot here, except for like the most technical and people that love geeking out on models and benchmarks and things like that. Most people have no idea. They're lost in a sea of what is thinking, what is like these levels, like these models, like, and they're just like, I guess I just use the most expensive one all the time, and that's going to quickly become a problem when subsidization probably begins to be
Actually,
removed.
yeah, when you say
And
that, it makes me think, I bet the best one is probably a dumb model asking advice from a smart model. And the labs, I'm sure, did this test already internally.
mm,
And they probably found that to be true, but they also
Well, I
maybe
think that
found that it
was.
saved money. It used too much.
I
It
mean,
didn't
wasn't
save
that
too
like
much
the big
money,
thing
and they wanted to have a
between?
smart model use more money. What?
Yeah, wasn't that the big thing with GPT-5? What they did? That's why all those other models got rolled into just one. Is that
GPT-5
they
is doing routing of some kind, but I don't know
okay.
what the routing. Like I
And
don't know if it
I think
does
originally
heuristic
they
routing.
got some
I
bad
don't know.
feedback first off the bat. But I think that that's the kind of thing that like is
Yeah.
huge, and it's huge also, especially as people get off these subscriptions, and even this agentic platform I'm building. It's like I'm gonna have to go to the company and be like, hey, we're gonna need a monthly AI token budget, not just subscriptions. There's gonna be tokens needed, and so the ability to solve that. So companies, like, not everyone's just using the most expensive model. Like, we're like, we got some budget. And by the way, I do want to touch on that too, because you've got a bunch of solutions with Trusted Router, and I didn't mean to blow up your spot by putting that comment on, but I think it is important to, I clicked on it because I was going to reply. The question was, if open routers close, is trusted router untrustworthy? And I think that's a great question. Open router's gotten a lot of horrible critique because of the name. Is like, they're not. How would you respond to Michael on the thread there? How is trusted router trustworthy, and how do you want to remain so?
Well, yeah, maybe it's a bad name. Like Slack is
well,
a chat app
OpenAI.
for people working on their apps. So I think a lot of
Open
people
AI.
name their companies the opposite because they can't get the domain. But I got the .com, so I don't know. I think
I love it. It says what it is, and you
it's a
stand
bit
behind. You stand behind it, you know. So I'm supportive, but I guess just like
maybe we should call it like own your agents or something. .com.
Yeah, that's right. Kicking it back to David, you know, like taking care. Do you use basically your subscriptions? How do you navigate your token use with OpenClaw? Let's bring it back to OpenClaw a little bit. You know, what you're using it for, how you're minimizing your costs. Give us a little bit of background. And also, you created some really cool, you know, additions to the OpenClaw project. It sounds like you've even shown me a couple of cool things. So love bring it back to a little bit, ground it in there in some applications and where where you're at with OpenClaw now.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so in terms of subscriptions and token use and things like that, for anything personal, I use subscriptions. So you know, I got the Max Codex subscription and the Max Claude Code, and so my OpenClaw uses Codex. So pretty much, you know, when I'm talking to my OpenClaw, it's GPT 5.5. For my more production apps, that is always using, well, it's probably going to be on Trusted Router soon. So, you know, a router that's like API, you know, metered by the token.
I sent you a PR to move it over.
Yeah, that's right. No, I'm on it. It's on the list. It's on the list.
People wrote it. It's good.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I think that's pretty important if you care about uptime. Also, you know, you shouldn't be using your subscriptions for production use. I mean, one, it's going to, you know, eat up your subscription. Two, it's against terms of service. They're not going to like that, and you're always going to be, I think, fighting.
GPT is against terms.
Yeah, like if I were to use my Codex subscription to run, you know, like a public service or something, yeah,
okay, but not OpenClaw is okay.
Yeah, OpenClaw is fine, like because that's still personal use according to them. Claude has different ideas of what is okay and not okay for their Claude Code subscription. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of standard in terms of models for production use. I really like Gemini. I think Gemini is really strong for certain types of workloads. I mean, especially things that are multimodal, especially for the price. But I don't know. We'll see. Like, you know, hopefully they have an answer to the GPT 5.6 and Fable. I'm pretty bullish on Google just as a whole. So I think they will, but I guess we'll see.
They got users, they got money, they got like, you know, the TPUs or whatever. Like they would have to really screw it up to not.
I mean, you know, like they did invent the transformer, which power, you know, is the foundation of all of this. But I don't know how many of those original authors of that paper they have left. I know one recently joined Anthropic or OpenAI.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess we'll see. And then, yeah, I don't know. You were talking about OpenClaw, and I guess some of the you know, the things that I built for it. I mean, very early on.
Why should anybody, like, why is it different than some, and what's the pros versus cons of just someone being like, I'm just going to get Claude or OpenAI to be my agent. I'm going to connect it to everything. It's like, why should I do OpenClaw or Hermes or any of these other things? You know, so that might be an interesting place to start too.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think my reflex answer is, look, if it's working for you, don't change it. You know, if it ain't broke, like, don't fix it. For me, you know, I had this white whale that I was chasing for years, you know, since mid 2023. That was the time when I was able to use Cursor and pretend like I didn't know how to code. I pretended I was a non-technical product manager and wound up having Cursor make me a mobile app. And so that was the very first, you know, in the true sense of vibe coding word, you know, a vibe coded app, meaning that I wasn't looking at the code. Like all I was doing was reacting to using it and, you know, my feelings towards it, and then having it make changes. But what that did was it made me realize that if I can make, you know, really useful software, and that's still basically what I made then is still the app that I use for archery scoring today, like, you know, 3 years later. So, you know, if you can make real software without looking at the code, then you don't need to be sitting at a computer in an IDE, which is actually how I made it, right? I was using Cursor. Claude Code hadn't come out yet. And so my white whale was trying to figure out how I could build software from my phone using that same, method. I would say the first thing that became available that could do that was Devon. But I always found Devon to be a little too expensive to use on my own side projects. Devon's used pretty heavily by my clients, like when I have, real software teams, and then it's a little commensurate with how you would spend, how much you would spend on, human software engineers. So Devon was the first one that could do it, and I feel like that was probably a real turning point. You mentioned, agents, because Devon had its own VM. It could download software. It had its own browser. It could connect to Slack in the same way that humans could. And I think all of that together made it, much more of an agent than the models themselves. But getting back to being able to create just more experimental
I think it was
software.
Devon was ahead of the curve years ago. Founders Fund company also. It was before the models were good enough to do that kind of interface. Like you could try to have them have the Slack and all this stuff, but they would just say dumb things and write dumb code. It wasn't until Opus 4.5 in like November 25th, 2025, where it got good enough that it actually hit like escape velocity on being good enough.
And so for more experimental software without a clear ROI, Devon was never that feasible for me to just use for all my dumb stuff. So I continually looked for like, okay, how can I use Claude Code or whatever remotely? And it led to using, all kinds of terrible hacky solutions, running terminal on my phone and, SSHing into a laptop that I left open. So why OpenClaw? Well, OpenClaw was the first to really nail down a experience where you had something like Claude Code. OpenClaw used Pi initially, which was, kind of occupied the same space as something like Claude Code, like a Claude Code competitor, and hooked it up to every chat provider, possible, and had it, in a way where you could just talk to it like you would an engineer and do it over chat. I use Discord, and it would just work on stuff for you. So if you put that on a server that ran 24/7, it was the first time where I felt like my ability to create apps and write software from my phone was solved. And it, took 3 years for me to get to that point, even though all the pieces I think were there much earlier.
And I mean, I really appreciated when we talked, because it was a reflection of what I often talk about with my consulting clients. Because I'm, full-time consulting right now. I'm not actually full-time, but I always find myself talking to the clients who are like, we need to adopt AI. We want to do automation. And I'm like, well, what's a burning use case? Like, let's talk about your actual, like, don't worry about AI video editing. I don't think you might not need to know about creating AI shiny videos. Like, what are you doing in your business that needs, where there's bottlenecks, where there's tedious tasks? These are great opportunities for automation and agents. And when you were helping me set up my OpenClaw, I was like, I want to do all these things. And you were like, let's bring it back to like, what's an actual task that you could really assign it? And so my first task was getting it to check 30 websites that my company maintains every day and texting me if there's any that are down or any are having problems. Otherwise, it goes into a spreadsheet, checks boxes, and it impresses like the client that they're like, oh, this is so cool. The last time it was checked was this morning. This guy's on it. You know what I mean? Well, my agent Nexus is on it. But it was cool. By the time it was set up with that was like a business use case. I then was riding my bike, super psyched. I finally got it set up. Listening to my podcast is AI for Business. That's my two podcasts are AI intelligence show for business, more serious, and then AI for Humans, which is like the hilarious version of these two guys. I think they used to be like gamers, but they're using AI in really cool ways. Anyways, I was on the bike listening to that podcast, and they brought up, it was when that Pope had a big thing about AI. I was like, wow, it's super fascinating. The Pope's talking about it and making like one of his big They don't even have that many. Yeah, it was during a Pope's legacy, they only have a few of these moments to talk about topics of these particular level of importance. And he made AI a topic. It was really impressive. So I was riding my bike and I was like, hey, Nexus. And I was actually using David's Clocky Talkie, which is a way for you to verbally talk with your claw, with your open claw. That and Lobster Link, you might be able to tell us, like, that's a way to see what your open claw is seeing. Really cool.
Can you demo this stuff? It'd be awesome. In 40
news,
it'd be cool to show it.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about Clocky Talkie that David helped me set up, and I was like, hey, I'm just listening to this podcast. But I want to like find this part of the podcast and write a LinkedIn post about it. Can you help me with that? And it was like, let me see what I can do. And it went off and it was like, hey, good news. The podcast's platform has transcripts built into it. So I found the transcript. The transcript has time markers. So I got the time marker, wrote a LinkedIn post for you with the time marker and emailed it to you for you to review tomorrow. And I was like, what? And I looked at my email inbox the next morning and I had a great LinkedIn post pointing specifically to that time marker.
Wow.
I was like, I didn't plan to do that. I was on a bike ride and I had an idea. And that's kind of where in the past it would have been like, God, that's a whole weekend of automation or a day of like Zapier or make.com. And this was just a conversation. It was so cool.
Yeah, I think some people wonder, like, okay, yeah, fine. But, Claude Code can do that too, right? And so like, why OpenClaw? And I think it's like, okay, but like, have you ever tried to type at a terminal while riding a bike? Like, it's not easy. You gotta have everything set up in such a way that you can talk to these agents and have them work for you when you are not chained to a desk. Now, some people, that's not a big deal, right? Like, they only want an agent to do these things for them when they are in work mode, when they're at a desk, and that only happens, specific times of the day. And then outside of that, like, what do they need an agent for? I personally have zero work-life balance. And so it's amazing to be able to talk to my agent at all kinds of inappropriate times of the day, like riding a bike or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So it kind of, I don't know, it depends on the person, how much it helps to have that always on, always ready, always waiting agent to just do your ad hoc whims for you. I think it's incredible. Seems like it's useful for you as well. But, I always hear in my head, like, oh yeah, but Claude Code can do the same thing. And it's like, yes, but only if you talk to it in this very narrow way, or you spend a lot of time building those integrations yourself. You can hook Claude Code up to Slack and they've got all that stuff, but it's certainly not the same, or wasn't the same when OpenClaw came on the scene.
Well, also that level of control, which isn't going to be right for everybody, but increasingly it's going to be right for more people, especially as the onboarding and the interface gets easier, because there's certain things that Claude just won't do. And we talk about that all the time with Trusted Router. There's information it just won't give you. Like, actually, when I was using it just to check security of my own app, it was like, sorry, we can't check that. Cybersecurity has been triggered. Now you're being downgraded. I'm like, I'm trying to just get information about my own app. Like, what the heck? Anyway, point being that having more control over, your LLMs that you're using and what they can and can't talk about, and also what they can and can't do.
Own your AI.
Own your agents, everybody. And I think that is important, because then you're not.
Or they're going to tell you that you can't do it.
Own your agents, but they're not slaves.
That's right. Own your collaborators. So wait, no, hold on. This metaphor is breaking down.
Employ your butler.
Own your trusted equal.
Exactly. So, all right, top use cases for Fable. How about that? It's like we've got now a couple more days. I don't know if there was something else that I missed there that you guys wanted to touch on, but I think that everyone's like, what do we do?
I'd love demo time of David's cool apps.
I love demo time too. That's right.
Related to what Dougie just said, yeah, so Fable will block you. Like, you can't do a lot of stuff like biology or fixing your own app. But we created in Trusted Router something called Open Patcher, and it's open source. And it's a combination of Kimi and GLM. And it's starting to approach Mythos level security, and it doesn't block you. It will let you patch your own code. And so if you go on Trusted Router, you can start to actually go beyond Fable and do things that you can't do there.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
Now,
in terms of
you can present
demo,
your screen here, David, if you want in the little UI.
Yeah, but I think okay. So let's just talk a little bit about what's on the table here. So we got Clocky Talkie, which Doug alluded to. So Clocky Talkie, as the name might imply, is a walkie-talkie to talk to your agent. Demoing this live is pretty difficult because it's a mobile app and would have to figure out it almost doesn't demo very well because it's going to look like voice mode on GPT. Like there's nothing that I'm going to be able to show you that isn't going to come across as like, okay, I get it. It's like, yeah, you can like, what is this? Transcribe and, speech to text. So the demo is kind of the least interesting part of it. If you happen to already have an OpenClaw and you have gotten into the habit, as you should, to have very specific sessions for different things that you want to do. So some people, they get OpenClaw, they hook it up to Telegram or WhatsApp, and that's it. They just have one like DM open with their OpenClaw, and that's everything. Everything goes in through that one channel, that one lane road, and that's cool. I don't think you should do that. I think you should have something like Slack or Discord where you have different channels for different purposes. Like, let's say, you mentioned 40 News, another one of my projects, Lobster Link, Clocky Talkie or whatever. Each one of those have their own channels. And then within the channel, if I message OpenClaw, it'll create a thread. And so that's kind of like a feature development thread within a larger project. So that's how I think
it's kind of like Claude Tag. Is that the kind of,
so I haven't used Claude Tag. I know Claude Tag is where it can be in Slack and it can respond to things that you're doing. So I haven't used it, but maybe. So the reason why, getting back to Clocky Talkie, is useful is because instead of this one channel, just like one voice channel chat that you have with your OpenClaw, you can have any session, so very scoped to a particular feature, or let's say you're ideating on a blog post or something like that. You can immediately switch to voice, and then you can switch back. And everything that you talk about with your agent still gets transcribed in that thread that you were in. So if you're in the thread, you're typing to it or whatever, it's over text. But then you go to the car because you have no work-life balance and you want to continue. You keep talking, and then you go back to Discord, and everything you talked about in the car is back in that thread. So all that's to say is, I think what is useful and interesting about Clocky Talkie does not show up in the interface. It doesn't really show up in the fact that it's voice chat with an LLM. It just has to do with, it gives you a lot of what you're used to with your OpenClaw if you're using it in a particular way, in a very seamless back and forth, voice kind of way. So unfortunately, not a good demo. So that brings me to the next one, which is also not a good demo, which is Lobster Link. Lobster Link, again, if I were to show this off, it would basically be like, okay, I open up my browser, you see my browser, and then now you see a web page. And if I move my mouse and I click and I type, I'm interacting with the web page. And so on a demo, it's like, cool, you're using a browser.
Wait, and just so people understand what the implications of this are, is that there's these agents, they're in like their boxes, and they have access to using a browser. It's sort of different than, it's not like your typical Chrome. It's kind of like, I guess, like a headless browser, right? Where they can start to click around and do stuff. Blows my mind. They're not using a screen, I guess. They're just doing their thing. But occasionally they'll want, we might want to see what they're doing. And so Lobster Link allows you to say to OpenClaw, hey, create a Lobster Link for me. And then it will, for us, create a version of what it's seeing that we can then interact with. So it bridges the gap, I guess, of right?
Yeah. So we were just talking about demo, right? So I could hit the screen share, you'd be able to see my laptop, and you'd be able to see me click around and move and do what I'm doing. So that is kind of effectively the technology at work here. So let's just say I have my OpenClaw every day. It asks me what I want for lunch. It gives me 4 options. I choose one. It goes on Grubhub. It orders it for me, shows up at my office. It's fantastic. If I wanted to see, if it ran into an issue and it's like, hey, Kimbap Paradise is closed, I might want to see what it's seeing on Grubhub to just verify that that's the case. I trust it now when it says that it's actually correct. But if I didn't, I could say, hey, share your browser window with me. It would send me a URL, a Lobster link URL. I click on that. I open it in my browser. And in my browser, I'm seeing the screen share of its browser. So as it moves around and clicks, I see mine updated exactly what it sees on Grubhub. It's two-way, though. So if it gets hit by a CAPTCHA or something that stops it from continuing, I can move its mouse and click on things and type into text fields. So I find this to be pretty useful for any site that you want it to use where you don't want to give it credentials. Security is a hot topic in OpenClaw, so sometimes it's just better not for it to not have credentials. It can't leak credentials that it doesn't know or have access to. And so that two-way is useful. It's like it gets to the login, you log in for it. Once it's logged in, its browser's now logged in, and it can use those cookies and keep interacting with it without having to do that. So again, that's all the usefulness of Lobster Link. Apologies, really crappy demo because it's people have seen remote desktop, they have seen screen share, they know what a browser looks like, and so moving around in a browser, not super compelling. But both of those are very useful tools for when you do have an OpenClaw.
Yeah, and I think that's solving things that are kind of in this very interesting stage right now where we're thinking about how we're going to interact with our agents in the future. I worked super hard on this app, and it's awesome. My whole team uses it. It's called Team Central. Lots of cool features. And then I presented it at one of my meet and greets project show and tell. And I worked so hard on this app. I mean, not as hard as a dozen developers for 6 months in India for tens of thousands of dollars or whatever. Maybe I worked hard on it nights and weekends for a month. But point being that I showed it, and they're like, someone was like, well, don't you just think that this is going to be redundant soon because everything's going to be like in voice? And I was like, God, you just said that. I worked so hard on this thing. And my point was like, yeah, maybe in time we'll be interacting with these, AIs just with voice and this sort of theory. And I can't wait. I'm going to be doing it on my treadmill. I'm going to be out of my seat. It's going to be fantastic when that happens. But for now, I think that UIs are really important. But we're figuring out how to interact with our agents. And so David just explained two interesting ways with Clocky Talkie and Lobster Link to facilitate and streamline that agent-human interaction. Voice, of course, other ways. That's just like you said with Clocky Talkie. Personally, like one thing, I was laid out last week. I was kind of sick, and so I was horizontal, but I wanted to still work. So I was working on with my OpenClaw. Nexus was helping me on a variety of projects. And now I linked up to GitHub, working on some things, inspired by some of you guys just being like, I just send it things and it codes stuff. I'm like playing with some of that stuff. I often get it to send me like reports of things I want to research, and it emails me reports and stuff that I can follow up on later. But sometimes it'll be like, hey, yeah, I need some information for you to do that. And it'll give me this crazy wall of text. And in Discord, sometimes it's split into different text messages. And previously I used to be like, okay, one, like if it had 10 questions, one, here's the answer. Two, now I say, I came up with this myself. I was like, can you just like make that into a pretty HTML feedback form with all the buttons and radio things and even sliders and text boxes, like whatever you need to give me that information. I can't do it in the text box. And it was like, no problem. And it whipped up a quick link for me, that one-time HTML page for me to give it feedback in a way that was nice for me. Press submit. And it's like, thanks, I got your info. And now and I was like, that's super cool. That wasn't even a feature of OpenClaw. It was like something I was curious if it could do. So, leading with curiosity of how it can streamline, how you can improve your relationship with these things is kind of cool.
Yeah, I love the creativity and not just accepting the frame, that the agent gives you. Like it's so powerful, and you don't always have to like restrict to that. But hold on, there was totally a record scratch like music stop moment when you said you were quoting the whoever that was like, wait, isn't everything going to be voice soon? Like, do people really believe that? No. So
I think you're going to have a UI for some time, everybody, personally.
No. So
I don't know. You just said that you want to use Clocky Talkie instead of even talking to a chat.
Yeah, when I'm in the car, like, because, it's dangerous to use a laptop unless, I don't know, maybe with the self-driving Tesla or something, it's fine. But no, hold on. So voice, way better for than typing, especially with an agent, because your talking speed, I forget what it is, maybe it's like 50 words per minute or something like that. That
200
is,
I think.
Depends
talking?
on the person.
Yeah. Oh man, I was like, I want
Depends
to
on
talk
the
to my,
substance.
when I ask
Debate.
my agent, we could look it up.
Of policy debate from high school, maybe.
Okay. So, all right. So just, I could totally be wrong. I'm just going to use fake numbers, but I think the, you know, how the relation is going to be correct, which is that if I want to get information from my head out into the world, and I want to do it like as high bandwidth as possible, I don't really want to type to my agent, because typing is going to be slower than speaking, especially, God forbid, you're on mobile. And context is really important. And oftentimes, even if you're being redundant or a little bit noisy in your communication, those are all signals, even if they're subtle, for the LLM to pick up on your intent and what you need. So it pays to be very verbose. And if you are typing, especially on mobile, you are going to be self-limiting and self-censoring, because it is more costly for you to get more words and tokens into the agent. So voice, 1000%, I think, is better than typing from me to the agent. However, there is also the concept of a picture being worth 1,000 words. There's also the concept of a movie being, you know, could be 24, 60 frames per second.
I totally agree with that, but that just means that you will talk and then it will generate literally a custom UI or custom image, a custom infographic, a custom movie. And that's not traditional UIs in any way. Like if I ask it a question, it makes a whole TikTok for me with like dancing teenagers and stuff, and I instantly get it. That's not a UI. That's totally different.
I don't know. I think that is a UI. I think it's probably just a more advanced UI. What I'm reacting to is just the idea that it's purely voice. I think voice is really good from the user to the LLM. I think video from the user to the LLM could probably be even more high bandwidth.
Like repairing a dishwasher.
And then in terms of getting information back from the LLM, I don't even know if a video is the richest, because let's just go back to voice. You can read. You mentioned 200 words per minute. You could probably read 200 words per minute, especially if you take scanning into account. You probably do 300 or more. So waiting on voice back from the LLM is incredibly slow. It could be much higher. I mean, you know, I think, you know, if it's text, you know, you'd probably just be the token output. Now, images or rich interfaces back, or explainer, like, probably goes even beyond text. Like if the LLM outputs a Brett Victor style explainer essay that's interactive, that's probably even more high bandwidth than just the text. So that's my reaction to it's voice. I think bidirectional voice is not.
I agree with that. I also I don't know if you want to show or talk about 40 News. I just sent the link to it.
Yeah, look, I'll talk about it real quick.
We have 1 minute. So
we are hitting our 3 p.m. Eastern, but I'm happy to stay on a little bit of extra. I'd love to see that, David. I'd also love for everyone to say with their last, segment too, is like what you're going to be doing with your access to Fable for your last few days. Is there anything you really want to set it on? So those two things I think would be great to wrap up on.
Okay, yeah. You can't really share my screen, but if anybody goes to 40.news, that's the website. There isn't, so what's the interesting AI angle here? So one, if you have a whim, an idea for a project, it can just get created, like, which is kind of wild. Like you mentioned that you don't need to hire a bunch of devs to do it. I just had the idea of, a daily news site where every article or every story is exactly 40 years delayed. Thank you. You brought it up. And so this kind of lets you experience events that can be, really, really big, really scary in real time, even if you already have the spoilers and you know how the season ends. So, like right now, a lot of Chernobyl's going on. There's some like crazy stuff going on in South Africa. I guess there's some Reagan stuff going on. You got the Cold War. But what's interesting is when you think about, when you learn about these in history, it's all wrapped up in a bow, and you lose a lot of the messy middle where things move forward and then back, and you just get the final outcome. It's really interesting to follow some of these stories as they're playing out, and as the journalists don't really know what's going to happen, as they make, predictions or they get things wrong, and then later it's redacted. And so it's an interesting way to experience history like that. And then on top of that, I think it's a good reminder that these things that, are really big at the time may turn out to have a huge impact on the world, but it's not world ending. Like, we're still here 40 years later, even though people at the time might have thought that was not going to be the case. Okay, now as it relates to AI, all of these stories are taken from newspapers, they're OCR'd, and then each article is stripped down to the independent, objective facts. And then from those facts, these articles are created. And so there's a whole AI pipeline. It's all Gemini that is doing this every day. And it works pretty well. I've been pretty happy with the project.
All right, take it away with again, the Fable question. I got one use case that I'm going to be working on later. I'm curious, you guys as great minds, is there anything you want to set it on that's interesting or going to inspire people who have subscriptions, the things they can do in the coming few days of access?
I mean, Fable is really good for the big hairy stuff that you were avoiding before, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, the AI bot, like the game auto playing behavior, like that's a really hairy, thorny problem. Anytime I gave it to Codex, it had issues with it. Just like a whole rewrite, if you've got a legacy app that you just never got around to cleaning up all the technical debt, like you can give it that as a goal. If you don't have the tests yet, like because it's a legacy app, and then you wouldn't want to make all those refactors without having the tests. But you can also have it do that first. Here's a huge untested app. Go make it fully tested, and then do the rewrite. So I think those types of ones are really good. Fable also is just really, really tenacious. If you give it a hard problem, it's very good at not giving up. Like, it will do huge amounts of development to create its own tools just to like get at what you want. There's a post by Simon Willison where I forget what he asked it to do, but he walked away and came back, and it had like basically created its own way to like simulate a browser. And it was like basically its own like AI PhD research project that it created in service of this like small task. And so it's that I think is a force that can be taken advantage of, and that is exactly why I think Anthropic got so cagey about its cybersecurity, is because that tenaciousness and that willingness to just do whatever it takes to achieve the goal is, I think, what makes security researchers scary successful.
Yeah, but why do they restrict LLM research with Fable?
Well, they don't want competition. That's a
right.
That's a separate thing.
Hey, Fable, build Claude. Go.
Yeah, Joseph, what about you, man? What are you going to be doing with your subscriptions?
Well, I used up my Fable. Yeah, I guess it was extended. Yeah, some refactoring maybe. This morning, a user wanted to add more graphs to the trusted router page, so I'm kind of adding that, and it's good to make that really nice. That's a good feedback loop, because Fable can look at it and say, "Oh, this is nice. Make it more like this." And I really want it to hammer into my Quill code, like Codex harness clone. So it's like 50% done. So maybe Fable can get it a lot closer and more usable, so that people can start coding in it. Because again, you're not going to be able to do any bio at all. If you ask like Fable, what's a gene, it will refuse. So
that's why you need
a new harness
router right there.
You trust router, but even trusted router, you need a harness, because if you use trusted router through Claude, which you totally can, it's very great. I have a skill that does that. It will still refuse if you ask it about biology, and that's like terrible. So you need your own harness actually to actually have freedom. And so so maybe we can finish that and get that launched. And then I need testers for that if someone wants to try out a new type of harness, coding harness. And then that is Mac only. It's a native Swift. And so I also I'm building a kind of clone of Mac OS by making it so you can recompile that into Linux using, I'll take all the native Swift without changing anything, just like compile it direct so it runs on Linux. And that's, probably gonna be millions of lines of code. So I need more free Fable, I guess, to get there. I wish more people would come and help build this project with me. I need more subscription accounts.
Oh, super!
It's about 250,000 lines of code right now to clone.
Oh my god! I was inspired by that in my own way. My use cases are, and then we'll wrap up here. Are one, I'm super proud. I used it all yesterday to plan out. I gave it lots of research on this agentic platform and different platforms out there. Some API documentation of the one that I think is really good, as well as access to click around that one. And I got it to plan out a super robust plan for me to set Opus 4.8 on. And my goal is to just see how many hours. I keep trying to see how many hours it can do things without needing me. And part of that is like asking up front all the things it needs. It sees that it's going to need throughout the process. So
and if it does ask you, just say, hey, I'm not going to, you decide. You just tell it. Because it gets in the habit of making, I saw the tweet, it was really good. And IKEA makes you feel good about building the furniture for yourself so that you feel more connected to it. It's called the IKEA effect.
It was like why they had ownership. Why back in the day when like, housewives everything was industrializing all the food stuff, is like they made cake.
It's like the egg and
put the egg in there because they felt like they were actually then baking, whereas it's just like add water because there's powdered egg in there. It didn't feel as good. But so
it's exactly that. So I think Fable is really good, or Claude is really good at giving you more than the codex. Like Claude is really good at trying to give you the IKEA effect. And so if you go back and just say, you decide, it's going to make a lot of terrible decisions.
Although there's going to be hard blocks. I guess the difference is you can say like, okay, listen, what are the hard blocks? I want you to, really come up with great solutions, but there's going to be hard blocks. Like it might be API keys, or it might be things like that. So you can ask like, what are the hard blocks that you're going to need from me in advance?
Oh, you haven't given it a credit card yet? And like a
right. Put limits on your APIs, people. So I think creating
free your agents.
That's right. The other thing that I wanted, the other thing is I don't know much about Linux, but a month ago I set up a Linux box to put OpenClaw on, and David helped me. And now I want to move my Linux box to the Linux box that Joseph just sent me because I bought one of his hardware devices. So again, I don't know much about Linux, so I'm going to get Fable to look at my entire OpenClaw and Linux installation and be like, hey, create a migration plan to this brand new, fresh one, and make it as super simple for me as possible. And I'm going to see how far that gets me, So a couple of little projects like that. My goal is by now the 12th, I guess, to have a few plans that then after I have no more access to then set my less powerful agents. Gosh, we're going to have to use Opus 4.8. What a downgrade. so quickly.
I mean,
maybe they'll keep pushing
Codex
it back.
5.6 is supposed to be pretty strong.
Oh, geez. It's just so funny how like yesterday's genius, we're now like, I have to downgrade back to what was cutting edge a month ago.
It's supposed to be close, and I choose to believe it because
the founder of OpenClaw has unlimited OpenAI, and he still uses Fable. So I don't know. I think it's pretty good evidence, right?
That's interesting.
I don't know. I mean,
guys, this has been so good. Make sure to check out Superstruct. Trusted router. My app's called Team Central. I should actually put that on my URL there. But thanks everyone so much for joining. Same time, same place next week, 2 p.m. Eastern for more Own Your Agents. And it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us, David, and as usual, Joseph.
Cool. All right. See you guys.
See you on the stream.